The first time I ran from the Alpha King, I didn't know I was carrying his heir. Now I do. The stone corridor breathes around me cold and damp as I stand in the doorway of my borrowed room. One hand cradles my belly, heavy and restless under my palm. The other grips a ring of iron keys big enough to drag me down if I fall. If I keep the door locked, I tell myself, the past can't get in. Then the torchlight shifts and he steps out of the shadows. Roman looks wrong in this crumbling keep. Too big for the narrow hall, too lethal for the way the smoke-soft light brushes his braids and the runes inked along his neck. Leather armor molds to every hard line of his chest and arms. His gaze drops from my face to my stomach, and the air leaves my lungs. "You hid well for an Omega," he says, voice low and almost amused. "But you forgot one thing." I can't move when he reaches for the keys, not to stop him, not to invite him closer. My wolf is already pressed against my skin, whining. I always find what's mine. He closes my fingers around the ring instead and points at my belly. "Marry me," he growls. "Every word a command, or I take the child." My heart slams once, twice. "Run," survival screams. "Stay," the bond whispers. And just like that, I realize there is no door in this kingdom that can keep him out, not when half of me is already his. I said yes with my mouth, but only my body bowed. Inside, every part of me was still screaming no. The words were barely finished when Roman's hand closed around my elbow, firm enough to remind me who held the power here, careful enough that my wolf shivered instead of snarled. He didn't give me time to think, to bargain, to fall apart. One moment, I was standing in the doorway of my borrowed room, keys biting into my palm. The next, the ring was gone, dangling from his belt alongside a dozen other things he owned without question. Apparently, I was just one more. "Pack what you can carry in 1 minute," he said. "We ride before the moon shifts." 1 minute? My voice cracked on the last word. "I'm 7 months pregnant, not a saddlebag." He didn't flinch. "You shouldn't have run if you didn't want me to chase, Omega." That word scraped over the raw parts of me, but I still turned back into the room, gathered the only things that were really mine. My mother's worn shawl, the small knife I kept under the mattress, the vial of herbs that dulled my scent when I was alone. Everything else, bowl, blanket, rust-spun dress, belonged to the keep. I refused to take its ghosts with me. When I stepped back into the corridor, Roman was already waiting, tall and solid as the stone walls, his warhorse pawing the packed earth outside the open gate. The animal was massive, black as midnight with a thick neck and eyes that rolled white when it saw me. It looked exactly like its rider, bred for war, not mercy. "I can walk," I said, clutching my bundle to my chest. His gaze dropped to my belly, lingering in a way that made heat prickle beneath my skin, part anger, part something I didn't want to name. "You'll ride," he answered. "You're carrying the future of my line. You don't stumble through mud like a camp follower." "I'm not carrying it for you," I snapped. "I'm carrying it for me." A muscle ticked in his jaw. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd argue. Instead, he closed the distance between us in 3 strides, hands circling my waist. I sucked in a breath as he lifted me like I weighed nothing, my feet leaving the solid safety of the ground. "Put me down," I hissed, fingers clawing at his leather harness out of pure reflex as the world tilted. "I am," he said, and then I was settling onto the saddle in front of him, the high pommel pressing against the underside of my belly. My legs were awkwardly spread, skirts bunched, dignity somewhere back on the floor of my little room. He swung up behind me with a smoothness that spoke of too many battles and too many bodies, his thighs bracketing mine, his chest sealing against my back. The instant his weight settled, his scent crashed over me. Wild forest, steel, smoke, and something darker that had haunted my dreams for months. My lungs forgot how to work. "Breathe," he ordered, mouth close enough that his words brushed the shell of my ear. It came out thin and unconvincing. His arms snaked around me, broad palms spreading low across my stomach like he thought I might leap from the saddle and bolt back into the trees. The baby shifted under his touch, a slow roll that made my breath hitch. Of course our child would respond to him. My traitor body always had. The gates creaked open. Cold night air poured in, licking over my face, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. Roman clicked his tongue, and the warhorse surged forward. I lurched, instinctively pressing back against him to keep from sliding, and his arm tightened, drawing me deeper into the cage of his chest. "Relax," he murmured. "I have you." "That's exactly what I'm afraid of," I muttered. He huffed a quiet laugh, the sound vibrating through my spine. "You don't trust me." "Trust you?" I twisted enough to glare over my shoulder, my braid dragging across his collarbone. "You tracked me, broke into my home, threatened to take my child if I didn't marry you. What part of that screams trustworthy?" "The part where you're on my horse and not in chains," he said evenly. "A different king would have dragged you by your hair. I'm supposed to thank you for basic decency?" "You're supposed to understand I'm not him." The forest swallowed the last glimpse of the keep. Branches arched overhead, turning the moon into a broken, shifting light that painted his tattoos in shards of silver. We rode in tense silence for a while. The only sounds the rhythmic thud of hooves, the jangle of tack, the distant call of some night bird that didn't care about royal scandals. I tried to keep my spine stiff, my body angled away, but there was nowhere to go. Every movement of the horse rocked me back against him. Every breath dragged in his scent. My wolf, stupid creature, pressed closer to my skin, ears pricked, tail wagging at a master she shouldn't recognize. "Stop it," I whispered to myself. "Stop what?" he asked. "Existing," I snapped. "Breathing, smelling like that." "What do I smell like, Mira?" There was a dangerous curiosity in his voice, like he already knew the answer and just wanted to hear me choke on it. "Like trouble," I said after a beat. "And arrogance, and bad decisions." He laughed softly, genuine this time. "You smelled a lot of trouble that night, little Omega. You still climbed into my lap." Heat shot up my neck. I was in heat. You were convenient. He went very still behind me, the kind of stillness that meant a predator had just heard something it didn't like. "Convenient," he repeated, voice dropping. "Is that what you call the bond, pulling your wolf to her knees?" "It's not a bond," I said quickly, too quickly. "It's biology." His free hand came up, fingers sliding along my throat, not squeezing, just resting there, feeling the frantic hammer of my pulse. "Keep lying to yourself if it makes you feel safer. But don't lie to me." I opened my mouth to throw something sharp back at him, but a sudden cramp knifed through my lower belly, hot and tight. The air punched out of me. My hand flew to his arm. "Roman!" The name ripped out of me without a title, without thought. In an instant, the teasing was gone. He yanked on the reins. The warhorse skidded to a halt, snorting. His arm left my middle only long enough for him to swing down. Then he was reaching up, hands firm on my hips, guiding me off the saddle with a care that didn't match the leather and steel. "Where?" he asked, eyes already scanning me like he expected to see blood. I grabbed his wrist and pressed his palm to the tight, aching curve of my belly. "Here. It's just tight. It hurts." His hand spread wide, fingers splayed as if he could cover all of me. The heat of his skin bled through the thin fabric of my dress. He lowered his head, braids falling forward, lips almost touching where his fingers rested. "Easy, little one," he murmured, and I didn't know if he meant me or the baby. "You're not finished baking yet." Despite myself, I laughed, a short, choked sound. The pressure eased slowly under his touch, the cramp melting into a dull ache. I let out a shaking breath. "Better?" he asked. "Yes." I hated how small my voice sounded. He didn't move his hand. "You should have told me if you'd been cramping before." "I'm not giving you more reasons to lock me up," I said, but the bite was gone from my words. His gaze lifted to mine, something unreadable flickering there. "I don't need reasons. I have a kingdom and a decree for that, but I'd rather have your honesty than your obedience." I looked away first. The trees loomed dark around us, shadows stretching long across the path. The night felt huge and wild and full of teeth. Somewhere far behind, the keep's torchlight had already vanished, swallowed by distance. "Get back on," he said quietly. "We're a long ride from the capital." "I'm tired," I admitted, "and my back hurts." He stepped closer. "Then sleep. I'll keep you in the saddle." "I'm not." The protest died on a yawn. He helped me mount again, this time moving slower, making sure the saddle didn't jab my sore hips. When he swung up behind me, his arm wrapped around me without hesitation, his hand finding its now familiar place over our child. "Close your eyes, Mira," he said, low and rough against my ear. "You won't fall. I have you." It was foolish to believe him. It was suicidal to relax. But the steady sway of the horse, the deep rumble of his breathing against my back, the warmth of his body caging mine, my exhausted muscles stopped listening to my fear. My head dropped against his chest. His heartbeat thudded slow and certain under my cheek. For the first time in months, my wolf went quiet. I drifted under, hating the way safety felt like his arms, his scent, his voice promising things he had no right to promise. I fell asleep on the ultimatum ride, cradled against the man who had blackmailed me into marriage. And worse than that, I slept well. The capital doesn't look like home. It looks like a mouthful of teeth. Stone walls rear up on either side of the great gate, higher than I remember, bristling with spear points and watchfires. Banners snap in the wind above us. Roman's crest, a black wolf's head on a field of storm gray, flanked by smaller flags of allied packs. The last time I rode under them, it was as a nameless Omega brought to serve at court. This time, every eye tracks me. This time, I am the scandal. The gates creak open. Our horse passes beneath the portcullis, iron bars like fangs above my head. Inside the courtyard, alphas in polished armor drop to one knee as Roman rides in. Their combined scent hits me first. Sharp spice, iron, dominance layered thick enough to make my wolf tuck her tail. Behind them, Omegas hover in doorways and along balconies, hands folded, eyes empty. They don't bow. They don't have to. Their stillness is a different kind of submission. Roman's arm tightens around my waist, steadying me as I shift on the saddle. "Breathe," he says, low so only I can hear. "I am breathing," I answer, though it feels more like drowning. Stable hands rush forward as we stop at the base of the steps. Roman dismounts in one smooth motion, then turns and lifts me down as if I'm made of glass. The courtyard goes quiet enough that I can hear fabric rustle, steel clink. Every alpha within sight is watching to see what he does. Every Omega is watching to see what happens to me. A man steps out from the top of the stairs, robes brushing the stone, a ring of keys and sigils heavy at his waist. Counselor Hadron. His hair is thinner and whiter than I remember, but his eyes are the same, cold, calculating, always weighing. 3 other counselors flank him like vultures on a ledge. "Your Majesty," Hadron says, bowing just enough to be polite. His gaze flicks to me, to my very obvious belly, and lingers there with poorly hidden distaste. "You return with news, not news," Roman replies. "Fact." He takes my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. The contact sends a shock up my arm, the bond straining like a chain that's been pulled too tight for too long. "This is Mira," he says, voice carrying across the courtyard. "She is my chosen, my mate, and the mother of the heir you've all been howling for." The words hit the crowd like a thrown spear. A ripple runs through the alphas. Surprise, anger, hunger. The Omegas don't move, but their eyes sharpen, 100 tiny flares of interest. Hadron's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Chosen, Your Majesty? Or stumbled upon?" His gaze slides back to me, slow as a blade. "Forgive my bluntness, but court rumors travel faster than riders. One heat, one night, and you ride home with an Omega ripe with child. Fortunate timing." A murmur, ugly and amused, moves through the gathered alphas. Heat burns my cheeks. I want to rip my hand from Roman's, to wrap my arms around my belly and shield the baby from their glee, their judgment. Roman's grip tightens. "Careful, Hadron." "Of course, my king," Hadron says smoothly. "We only wish to ensure the line remains pure. The packs will have questions. What pack claims her? Who are her parents? What proof do we have that this is truly your heir and not a trap?" Another counselor adds helpfully. "Some Omegas are clever when their bellies are empty." The courtyard hums. I feel them looking at me, up and down, measuring my simple dress, my worn shawl, my lack of jewels. Mira, the story writes itself, border trash who sunk her claws into a king. It would be easier to stay silent, easier to let Roman speak for me, to hide behind his title and his teeth. That's what every Omega here expects. That's what Hadron expects. Instead, I lift my chin. My mother was of the Cedar Line pack, I say, loud enough to carry. My father married out to a man in the Eastern Hills. He died when I was 13. My mother died before that, after 3 seasons of coughing blood. I came here because your recruiters promised honest work, not a throne. A few of the Omegas blink, interest sharpening further. They are not used to hearing one of their own speak in a courtyard full of alphas unless spoken to. Hadron's mouth twitches. You see, Majesty? No noble ties, no alliances, just a convenient heat and an ambitious girl who knows how to climb a bed. The baby kicks hard, reacting to my surge of rage. I press a hand to my side, breathing through it. Roman moves so fast I barely track it. One heartbeat he's at my side. The next he's halfway up the steps, fist twisted in Hadron's robes, pulling the old man down to his knees. You forget yourself, he says, voice gone cold enough to frost steel. You speak of your queen, queen. The word echoes in my skull like a bell. The courtyard gasps. Even the banners seem to snap louder in the wind. Hadron's face flushes, but he doesn't look away. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but no moon bond has been witnessed. No ceremony. The Pax will not accept. Roman releases him with a shove and turns, facing the courtyard, the balconies, the open windows where servants crowd to stare. You want proof? He asks. You want a display to feed your gossip? Then in front of every alpha, every counselor, every hollow-eyed Omega, he does something I've only ever seen done in private, between mates or warriors sworn to each other's blades. He bares his throat, to me. His head tips back, chin lifting, exposing the vulnerable line of his neck. The runic tattoos there curve over the pulse point, beating strong and steady. The gesture is simple and enormous, trust and surrender and declaration all at once. He is a king. He is an alpha. And he is, in this moment, choosing to show his weakest place to an Omega no one here thinks deserves him. The courtyard goes silent, stunned. My breath catches. Instinct screams at me to step forward, to press my mouth to that offered skin and seal what he's just declared. My fingers twitch at my sides. The bond between us surges, wolf pressing hard against my ribs, whining with something like joy. But I stay where I am. If I move, this becomes a story they'll twist into whatever suits them. The scheming Omega who forced a king to his knees. The witch who bewitched him. The trap, I do nothing. And somehow that makes the gesture worse. Roman holds the position long enough to make his point, then drops his chin, gaze cutting back to Hadron. You question her, you question me. You call her trap, you call me fool. Is that what you wish written in the histories? Hadron bows low. No, Your Majesty. Then remember your place, Roman says. All of you. He descends the steps, takes my hand again, and leads me into the palace. The doors shut behind us with a boom that feels like the closing of a jaw. Inside, the air is cooler, scented with lavender oil and old stone. Servants scatter at our approach. Some bow, some just stare. I feel their eyes like hands on my back. Roman doesn't speak until we reach the wing that used to house visiting dignitaries. Now, if the guards flanking the hall are any indication, it's mine. You didn't have to do that, I say finally when we're alone enough that our footsteps echo. Do what? His voice is rough, frayed at the edges. Bare your throat, I answer. You just painted a bigger target on me. I painted it on myself, he says. That was the point. We stop outside a door carved with running wolves. My door, apparently. My prison. I pull my hand from his. Am I protection, Roman, or weakness? That's what they're all wondering now. Did you claim me to shield the throne, or did I crawl under your skin so deep you can't think straight? He exhales slowly, like he's been holding his breath since the courtyard. You think I don't know what they're saying? I know exactly what they're saying, I reply. I heard it in Hadron's voice, in the way the alphas looked at me. I'm the heat that trapped the king, the liability you dragged home, the soft spot enemies will aim for. So which is it? Am I a shield or the crack in your armor? For a long moment, he just looks at me. I hate that I can't read him. I hate that some part of me wants to. Instead of answering, he reaches past me and pushes the door open. Inside, firelight spills over thick rugs, a wide bed, a table already laid with food I didn't ask for. It smells like comfort and capture. Come to the war room after you've eaten, he says. I blink. Did you not hear me? I heard every word. His gaze drops briefly to my belly, then lifts again. You're asking the wrong question, Mira. Anger flares. Enlighten me. He hesitates, jaw working as if he's biting back 3 answers before letting one out. Ask me what I want for our child, he says quietly. Then you'll know what I'm willing to be for you. The reply knocks the breath out of me. I was ready for denial, for arrogance, for him to tell me I'm nothing but a duty or a mistake. I wasn't ready for that. Before I can respond, he steps back, putting distance between us. The war room, he repeats. When you're ready. Then he turns and walks away, leaving me standing in the doorway of my new gilded cage, heart pounding too fast, 100 sharp questions suddenly tangled around a single fragile one. What do I want for our child? And what if his answer matches mine? The herb gardens are the only place in the palace that don't smell like him. Out here, the air is damp earth and rosemary, crushed mint and wild thyme, the faint sweetness of night blooming, flowers that don't care who sits a crown on their head. The walls are lower, the sky wider, the wind strong enough to tug strands of hair from my braid. If I stand in the right corner and close my eyes, I can almost pretend I'm back in the border hills, not trapped in the court of wolves waiting for a bond ceremony I never asked for. Almost. You hide poorly, little queen. The voice comes from behind a hedge of sage, smooth as oiled steel. My wolf stiffens before I do. I turn and see him step into the path, an alpha, tall and broad, but where Roman is all rough edges and scars, this man looks polished. His dark hair is bound back with a silver clasp, his armor worked with delicate inlays, his cloak a deep hunter green lined with fur. A prince, if the signet at his throat is anything to go by. I'm not hiding, I say, fingers tightening around the stem of the rosemary I've been pretending to study. I'm walking in circles. He smiles faintly. Around the same bed of plants. For 20 minutes, so he's been watching. Of course he has. Nothing in this place happens without someone watching. He bows, a graceful sweep that's more mockery than respect. Prince Kale of the North Wind Packs at your service. I didn't ask for your service, I answer. Roman did, Kale says. He invited me here to swear fealty at your bond ceremony. His gaze drops to my stomach, the swell pushing at the seams of my dress. To the future heir, the way he says it makes my skin itch. Congratulations, then. You'll get your spectacle. Will I? He drifts closer, boots silent on the gravel. You don't look like a woman eager to be bound under the moon in front of the packs. I don't look eager to talk to strange alphas in gardens either, I say. Yet here we are. His laugh is soft, almost approving. You are braver than you look. I look pregnant and tired, I say. Bravery has nothing to do with it. He studies me for a moment, head tilted, as if he's weighing how hard he'll have to push before I bolt. Then, with a small sigh, he reaches into his cloak and pulls something out. It's a folded bundle of parchment, tied with a thin leather cord and sealed not with wax but with plain twine. No crest, no symbol, just paper. My heart stutters. What is that? An exit, he says simply. Forged travel papers, passage through my lands and beyond the mountains. Enough coin to buy a new name and a quiet life somewhere Roman's reach does not yet stain. He holds the bundle out between us. Take it. I don't move. Why would you help me? Help you? His smile twists. Don't flatter yourself. I'm helping him. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, Kyle replies. Right now, Roman is weak, distracted. He brought a runaway Omega home and called her queen. Do you think the old alphas are pleased? Do you think the council sleeps soundly? No one in this palace sleeps soundly, I say. It's supposed to be a joke. It comes out flat. True, he allows, but their unease is nothing compared to what is coming if you stay. I should walk away. I should turn and head back inside, straight to Roman, throw these words in his face and let him deal with the intrigue. That's what a good mate would do. That's what a queen would do. I lived here before, I say instead. I know how the palace works. I know how Roman works. He's many things, but he's not careless. He is when it comes to you, Kyle says quietly. Because it isn't just lust, is it? Not just politics. He's attached. The word sounds almost obscene on his tongue. And that makes him dangerous. To himself, to you, to all of us. Something cold slides down my spine. So your solution is what? Smuggle me out and hope he forgets I exist? Roman forget? Kael's gaze sharpens. No, he won't forget, but he will survive, and so will the packs. Explain, I demand. He glances around, though we are alone. The Omegas who tend the herbs have long since retreated, sensing alpha tension like a storm. Only the wind and the buzzing of bees remain. Have you heard the prophecy? He asks. I almost laugh. I grew up in a border pack. The only prophecies we worried about were whether the winter would kill us. This one is older, he says, and more specific. An Omega-born royal child who will end the age of alphas, a bondbreaker, a child who will carry both power and vulnerability and use it to tear down the old ways. The baby shifts, a slow drag of limb beneath my ribs. For a moment I can't breathe. That's just a story, I say, voice too thin. The council doesn't think so, Kael answers. The elders have been muttering for years. When you left the capital after your night with Roman, they relaxed. When you disappeared completely, they started to sleep again. And when word came that the king had found you with a swollen belly and dragged you home, he shakes his head. You should have heard them howl. I can imagine it. Old men in heavy furs snapping about bloodlines in order while the walls shake with their fear. Roman standing there, jaw set, eyes cold, refusing to bend. Roman doesn't care what they say, I insist. Now, Kael says. He doesn't care now, when your child is hypothetical and still kicking safely under your ribs. But what about when the packs start to fracture? When the southern alphas refuse to swear to a bondbreaker? When war looms and the council whispers that one sacrifice could prevent 1,000 deaths? The wind sighs through the time, carrying his words straight into the hollow parts of me. I picture a council chamber, a noose made of prophecy and fear, a choice that looks a lot like the one he forced on me. You think he'd kill his own child, I say. I think he'll be asked to choose between the child and the packs, Kael replies. And I think, when that day comes, he will pick the wolves over the lamb. And me? My throat is tight. What happens to me in this little nightmare? He doesn't answer immediately. That tells me more than any words could. You are the crack in his armor, he says finally. They will demand he seal it. If he refuses, they will find another way. Assassins. Accidents. You know how it works. You lived under this roof. I do. Gods, I do. Leave now, Kael urges. He steps closer, the parchment bundle still between us. Before they decide your death is easier than your exile. Before the prophecy grows teeth, my hand lifts of its own accord. The papers look unremarkable up close. Simple parchment, worn edges, faint ink where names can be changed with a careful hand. Freedom never looks as grand as you think it will. You're certain these will work? I ask. I had them forged myself, he says. My sigil opens my borders. Once you're past the mountains, no one will follow, even Roman. You underestimate his stubbornness, I murmur. I underestimate nothing, Kael replies. And I know this. He will hunt you until he is bleeding and broken. But if you vanish cleanly without trace, the council will chain him to his throne. He will have no time, no men, no official excuse to search. They will say a true king does not chase Omega ghosts. Omega ghosts. That's what I'd be. A story told in low voices. The mistake he made before he remembered his duty. My fingers close around the bundle. It's heavier than it looks. If I take this and stay, I say slowly, what then? Then you're as foolish as he is, Kael says, and I will have wasted good parchment. He steps back, giving me space, giving me the illusion of choice. I tuck the papers into the pocket sewn inside my shawl. The baby kicks again, sharp this time, as if protesting or agreeing. I can't tell. I need to think, I say. Don't think too long, he warns. The bond ceremony is in 3 nights. After that, your absence will be a declaration of war, not a quiet disappearance. He turns and walks away, cloak snapping behind him. I watch him go until the hedges swallow him, then stand there, breathing in rosemary and lies until my legs remember how to move. Back in my rooms, I lock the door myself, ignoring the way the guards shift outside at the click. The fire has been stoked. Fresh linens, fresh fruit, a pot of tea I didn't ask for. Comfort as a cage. I go to the wardrobe, pull my shawl off, and dig the bundle out. My hands shake as I slide it into a crack between the back panel and the stone wall, where only someone desperate and nosy would find it. I won't use them. I tell myself, I am lying. I know exactly when I'll use them. The moment fear finally outweighs stubbornness. The moment Roman does something I can't forgive. The moment the prophecy stops being rumor and starts being a sentence. I spend the rest of the day moving through the palace like a ghost, watching, listening. The whispers are worse now. Bond breaker, curse, trap, queen. The words cling to me like cobwebs. By the time the sun goes down, I'm too restless to sit. I find myself drawn toward the one place in the palace where the air doesn't feel like it's pressing on my skin, the balcony overlooking the training grounds. Below, rows of warriors move through drills, steel flashing in the torchlight. Roman is among them, stripped down to a simple shirt and trousers, sweat darkening the fabric, braids damp against his neck. He moves like the horse did on the road, strong, sure, deadly. Every strike is precise, every step controlled. He is a storm in human skin, and the men around him are wise enough to keep their distance. I'm so focused on him that I don't hear the door until it clicks shut behind me. "You're supposed to be resting," he says. I don't jump, but only because I've already spent the day with my nerves flayed raw. "You're supposed to be ruling," I counter. "Instead, you're down there trying to break your soldiers. They need sharpening." He comes to stand beside me at the railing. So do I. We stand in silence for a few breaths. The night smells like iron and sweat and distant rain. My hand drifts to my belly, stroking the curve where our child presses against my skin. "Is it always like this?" I ask finally. "This much, looking? At me?" He huffs. "I'm the king. They look, they judge, they scheme at me," I say. His jaw tightens. "They are learning to fear me?" I scoff. "To respect you." He glances sideways at me. "To know that if they come for you, they answer to me. And if they come for you," I ask, "who do I answer to?" He looks surprised, like it never occurred to him I might worry about that direction. "No one. I've been answering to myself my whole life." "That sounds lonely," I say. "It is," he doesn't soften the word, "but necessary. My mother used to say, 'Prey survive by watching the predators,'" I murmur. "Know where they sleep, where they hunt when they're hungry. That's the only way to live long enough to see spring." "Was she prey?" he asks. "We all were," I say. Border omegas. We learned early not to draw attention, not to take up space, not to speak too loudly in a room full of teeth. "You're speaking loudly now," he says quietly. "That's because I keep forgetting you bite," I shoot back. He laughs, a rough, surprised sound. "You never forget. You just refuse to flinch." The admission warms something small and stubborn in my chest. We fall into another silence, this one less sharp. "What was she like?" he asks after a while. "Your mother..." I blink. Of all the questions he could ask, I wasn't expecting that. "Small," I say slowly, "smaller than me. But she walked like she was taller than every alpha in the village. She sang when she cooked. She swore like a soldier. When the cough took her voice, she taught me how to braid my own hair and said, 'If you can do this, you can do anything.'" He listens like every word is a map to a place he's never seen. "My father remarried," I continue. "He needed another pair of hands. She didn't like me much, said I took up too much space without earning it." "And you believed her?" he asks. "For a long time." I glance down at my belly. "Not anymore," he nods, "once." "Good. What about you?" I ask. "Did your parents tell you you were born to take up all the space?" "My father did," he says. "He believed a king should fill every room until no one else can breathe. My mother..." He trails off, eyes going distant. "She thought a king should learn to stand aside sometimes, to listen, to bend. He called it weakness. She called it wisdom." "Who won?" I ask softly. "They both died," he answers. I'm still deciding. There's a vulnerability in his voice I haven't heard before, a crack in the steel. It makes my throat tight. "What do you want for our child, Roman?" I ask, the question that's been gnawing at me since the corridor. He exhales long and slow, like he's been waiting for me to ask. I want them to grow up in a world where they don't have to choose between being predator or prey, he says, where they can be both, or neither, where no one weighs their worth by their scent or their rank. That world doesn't exist, I say. Then we build it, he replies, brick by brick, law by law, and if the packs resist, I press. If they demand blood and sacrifice and prophecies fulfilled, his jaw hardens. Then they can find another king. My fingers curl on the stone rail, knuckles white. The forged papers hidden in my wardrobe feel like they're burning through the walls, whispering that there's another option. Another path. Don't look so surprised, he says. I told you in the corridor, ask what I want for our child, and you'll know what I'm willing to be for you. I look at him then, really look, at the man who chased me across half the kingdom, who threatened me with the law, who bared his throat in a courtyard full of teeth, who is now talking about tearing down the world that built him. I am afraid. I am stubborn. I am not sure I believe him. But for the first time, standing there under the dark sky with the scent of steel and rain and rosemary in the air, I want to. The hall is so loud it takes a moment for the insult to cut through. Torches spit smoke along the stone walls, banners hang heavy from the rafters, and the long table groans under platters of meat and jugs of wine. Alphas press in on every side, laughing too loudly, boasting too easily, their scents a choking mix of dominance and blood. I sit at Roman's right hand, back straight, hands folded around my cup of watered wine like it's a shield. The baby rolls under my ribs, restless, as if they can feel the tension humming in the air. Then Lord Garin decides to speak. He's a minor noble from some valley I've never heard of. Armor a little too shiny, beard a little too oiled. The kind of man who thinks volume is power. He leans forward on his elbows, cheeks flushed from drink, eyes glassy. Of course we're all very grateful, Your Majesty, he says, words slurring just enough to be dangerous. His gaze slides to me, then drops with deliberate slowness to my stomach. Someone had to carry the air, even if it's just a temporary womb. For a heartbeat, I don't understand. The words slam into me out of order. Temporary, womb. A few of the nearer alphas choke back snorts. Further down the table, the sound is less restrained. Snickers, a couple of outright laughs. Across from me, an omega pouring wine flinches so sharply she spills a splash onto the table. Another omega at the far end stares fixedly at her plate, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Heat blasts up my neck, then drains so fast I go cold. My palm flies to my belly, instinctive and useless, as if I can shield the baby from being reduced to a function. I open my mouth, ready to say something that will probably get me exiled or beheaded. Roman is faster. He moves like the room doesn't exist, like there are no witnesses, no protocol, no kingly dignity to preserve. 1 second he's beside me, fingers loose around his goblet. The next, he is halfway down the table, grabbing Garen's collar and yanking him forward. The crack of fist on bone is so loud it silences the hall. Garen's head snaps sideways. His chair tips. He crashes to the floor, a belch of blood and a wet gas bursting from him. A shard of tooth skitters across the table and lands near my plate. No one laughs now. Roman stands over him, shoulders heaving, knuckles already swelling and slick with red. When he speaks, his voice is quiet enough that the softest omega and the most battle-scarred alpha can both hear. Say it again, he murmurs. Call her a temporary womb. See if you still have a jaw to move. Garin wheezes, clutching his face. No sound comes out but a wet whine. Roman straightens, gaze sweeping the table, the benches, the balconies where servants hover, frozen. She is not temporary, he says. She is not a womb. She is my mate, my queen. You speak of her that way again, you speak of me. Think very carefully about the price. Silence presses against my ears. The only sound is Garen's ragged breathing and the faint drip of blood onto flagstone. Even the fire seems to burn quieter. Then, as if nothing happened, Roman wipes his hand on Garen's expensive embroidered collar, turns and walks back to his seat. Eat, he says, picking up his goblet with his uninjured hand. Or don't. I don't care. Conversation stirs in cautious, broken threads. No one meets my eyes. The omegas look at me differently now, some with sympathy, some with something like hope, some with a wary kind of calculation. I stare at my plate. The food tastes like ash in my mouth. You should eat, Roman says after a while, not looking at me. You broke his jaw, I whisper. He insulted my queen, he answers. Your property, I say before I can stop myself. His head turns slowly. Is that what you think this is? What else should I think? I keep my voice low, pitch not to carry. You drag me back here, threaten me with the law, and then beat a man half to death for saying what the rest of them are already thinking. You don't get a medal for punishing the loudest one. His eyes narrow. You are shaking. I'm pregnant, I snap. And I just watched you rearrange a man's face. Forgive me if I don't feel like applauding. The muscle in his jaw ticks. We're leaving. I haven't finished. You haven't eaten, he cuts in, and I won't have you sitting here as their spectacle any longer. Get up, Mira. His tone leaves me with two options, obey or make a scene bigger than the one he just caused. The baby kicks hard, unhappy with the lingering tension. I push my chair back and stand. The walk out of the hall feels like crossing a battlefield. The weight of every gaze presses between my shoulder blades. Some are resentful, others curious, a few openly fearful now that they've seen just how fast their king's temper snaps. Roman doesn't touch me until the doors close behind us. Then his hand settles at the small of my back, warm and steady, guiding me down the corridor. I shrug him off the second we're alone in my rooms. You shouldn't have done that, I say. Which part? He asks, voice dangerously calm. Stopping a man from reducing you to flesh at my table? Making a spectacle, I bite out, proving exactly what they think, that I'm your temper's favorite toy. He exhales, long and slow, as if counting to 10 in a language I don't know. You'd prefer I say nothing? I'd prefer you listen, I shoot back. He opens his mouth. I don't let him speak. I cross to the wardrobe, drag it open, reach into the crack in the back where the stone doesn't quite meet the wood. My fingers close around the bundle I'm pretending not to think about all day. The forged papers are warm from the hidden space, the leather tie rough against my skin. I turn and throw them at his feet. He doesn't flinch, though the bundle hits hard, scattering a couple of loose pages across the floor. He stares at them, then at me. What is that? He asks. My choice, I say. Or it was until you stomped it across the hall. He bends, picks them up, flips one open. I see his eyes skim the neat false name, the forged seals, the sigil pressed into the corner. Kale's work, Kale's promise. How long? Roman asks. How long have you had these? Since the garden, I say. When your dear ally decided to make sure you didn't ruin yourself over an inconvenient Omega and her inconvenient child. Why didn't you tell me? His voice is low now, too soft. Because you never asked if I wanted to stay, I say. You asked if I would marry you. You asked if I would obey. You never once asked if I wanted this life, this palace, these eyes on me. He did, and he offered me a way out. His jaw works, and yet you're still here. For now, I snap. Do you know what I'm afraid of, Roman? Truly afraid of? He looks at me like he's bracing for a blow. Tell me, I'm afraid that I will vanish into these walls, I say, the words tumbling out hot and ragged. That I'll become a story your servants tell. The Omega who gave the king his heir and then disappeared into the nursery. I'm afraid your council will decide I'm too loud, too stubborn, too low-born, and they'll take the raising of our child out of my hands for the good of the kingdom. My throat tightens. I push through it. I'm afraid I'll look up one day and realize my world has shrunk to your bed and four walls, that my child will grow up speaking the council's language, thinking their thoughts, while I stand in a corner like furniture. I'm afraid I'll become exactly what he called me at dinner, a temporary womb with a story tacked on. The last word cracks. I press my lips together. Roman steps forward, slowly, as if approaching something skittish. Look at me, Mira. I do. I don't know why, but I do. His eyes have gone darker, the gold burning around his pupils. When he speaks, it isn't in the common tongue. The old pack words roll off his tongue, thick and heavy, carrying weight I can feel in my bones, even if I don't understand every syllable. While I draw breath, he says, voice rough, no law, no counsel, no prophecy, no threat will take this child from your arms. While my heart beats, any hand that reaches for them, or for you, will lose more than fingers. I swear it by blood and bond and bone. The air feels different when he finishes. The old words settle on my skin like a cloak. Break a vow spoken like that, and the punishment isn't just political. It's spiritual. It stains. You can't promise that for everyone, I say, quieter now. I can promise it for me, he replies, and I am the one they have to kill to get to you. What if they try? I ask. What if they decide I'm the crack in your armor and aim there instead of at your chest? For a moment, something savage flashes in his eyes. Then I will tear this place apart stone by stone. I will raise whatever they hide behind. I will make the phrase "touch the queen" into a curse. There's no boasting in it. Just a simple, terrible truth. The papers on the table seem flimsy now, thin parchment trying to stand against a storm. That isn't very kingly, I murmur. Then they chose the wrong king, he says. We stand there, breathing the same air, the distance between us full of things we haven't said. The baby shifts, a slow roll against my ribs, impatient. Come here, I say, surprising myself. He hesitates. Then he closes the space, stopping half an arm's length away, as if I might still bolt. I take his injured hand, battered knuckles, drying blood, and guide it to the curve of my belly. The baby kicks, sharp and certain, right into his palm. His breath stutters. His fingers spread, trying to cover as much of me as they can. His thumb trembles once, then steadies. They know you, I whisper. Or they're complaining I shook the table, he says. But his voice is soft in a way that makes my chest ache. This time, I don't clamp down on the bond. I let it rise, warm and heady, flowing from his skin into mine, from mine into the tiny life between us. For a moment, there is no counsel, no prophecy, no insult ringing in my ears. There is only his hand, my body, our child punching back at the world. Just a little, in that sliver of night, I choose the cage. Just a little, I believe him. The palace has been holding its breath for 3 days. Preparations crawl into every corner. Omegas hustle through corridors with bolts of pale fabric and baskets of flower petals. Smoke from sacred herbs drifts under doorways, clinging to hair and skin until everything smells faintly of sage and sweet resin. Somewhere beyond the walls, the training grounds echo with howls as warriors run their drills under the waxing moon, their voices threading through the stone like another kind of incense. Tonight the moon will watch me say yes in front of everyone. They bring my dress just as the sky begins to bruise purple. It's softer than anything a border omega has any right to wear. Layers of fabric that shimmer between white and silver, catching the light like frost. Silver thread has been worked into the bodice in tiny running wolf patterns. So fine I only see them when I shift. When the seamstress tightens the laces, the dress settles around my belly, not hiding it but framing it like a proclamation. You wear it well, my lady, she murmurs, fingers deft at my spine. I wear it like armor, I say, trying to keep my breathing steady. She smiles without arguing, smooths one last wrinkle, and slips away, leaving me alone with my reflection. The girl in the polished metal looks like a stranger, hair braided back and looped with silver charms, mouth painted the barest shade darker, shoulders bare above royal cloth. Only the eyes are familiar, too sharp, too wary for a woman about to be celebrated. I lay both hands on my stomach. This is for you, I tell the baby, voice barely above a whisper. Remember that when you're old enough to yell at me. They kick hard enough to nudge my ribs. I take that as an answer, a knock. Then Roman fills the doorway. He's in ceremonial black, lines of his crest picked out in storm gray and silver at his shoulders. His braids have been pulled tighter, his tattoos stand stark against his throat, and though he's left his usual visible weapons behind, he still looks like he could kill a man with nothing but his hands and a bad mood. His gaze sweeps down me once, slow and stunned, then comes back to my face. For a moment the king is gone. It's just the man who found me in a crumbling keep and said, "Marry me," like a threat. You're staring, I say, because my heartbeat is suddenly ridiculous. Get used to it, he answers. I may never stop. Heat rushes up my neck. Then we should go before your council decides I bewitched you. Too late for that, he mutters, but he offers his arm. I take it, fingers resting lightly on the crook of his elbow, and let him lead me out. The binding courtyard has been transformed. Torches ring the open space, flames bowing and straightening in the wind. White petals have been scattered over the stone like snow, already crushed under the boots of arriving guests. Above us, the full moon hangs huge and bright, close enough it feels like I could reach up and smear its light with my fingers. The packs stand in layered circles, alphas closest, then betas, omegas at the back. Their combined scent is a wall: spice, iron, fur, anxiety. The murmur of voices drops as we step onto the path. I feel their attention hit me like heat. Roman's hand covers mine on his arm, a brief squeeze before we reach the dais where the elder waits, robed in white, hair threaded with bone beads that click when he moves. On a low stone altar between us rest two shallow bowls, one filled with clear water, one empty, and a bone-handled knife. Before the first pack and under the watching moon, the elder intones. The king brings his chosen to be bound. Roman of Stormcrest, do you claim this Omega, Mira of Cedarline blood, as mate and queen? I do, Roman says. His voice is steady, his gaze locked on mine. Mira, the elder continues. Do you claim this Alpha as mate and king? My throat is tight. The baby shifts, pressing outward like they're listening. I think of forged travel papers hidden in my wardrobe, of herbs under my nails from the garden, of every time I chose the cage a little more. I do, I answer, and the word feels like stepping over a line I can't uncross. The elder gestures to the altar. Blood binds what words begin. Roman takes the knife first. He drags it across his palm without flinching, dark blood welling and dripping into the empty bowl. The metallic tang hits the back of my tongue. When he passes me the knife, hilt first, his bleeding hand doesn't shake. It will sting, he murmurs. So do most important things, I mutter, and slice my own palm. Pain flares, sharp and hot. My blood joins his in the bowl. The elder stirs it into the water with a sprig of bitter herb until the clear surface clouds. Drink, he commands. Roman lifts the bowl, swallows, then holds it out. I raise it to my lips. The mixture tastes like iron and smoke and something wild, like rain on hot stone. The bond surges as soon as it hits my tongue, a hot rope tightening between us. The elder raises his hands. By blood, by vow, by moonlight, you are bound. For a heartbeat, the courtyard is hushed, the air too thin. I hear my own pulse in my ears, then a voice slices through the silence. How generous of you, Roman, to bind us all to your mistake. Everything in me goes cold. I know that voice. Prince Kyle stands on the edge of the dais, just outside the circle of petals, flanked by warriors in his green and fur. They've forced their way up through the ranks while everyone watched us drink. Their swords are unsheathed, gleaming. Roman's shoulders stiffen. You tread dangerous ground, he says. This is a sacred right. So is survival, Kyle answers. His eyes rake over me, lingering on my belly. You give the moon quite a show, an Omega from nowhere, a royal child from heat and chance. The elders have a word for that pairing. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. When he speaks again, his voice carries to the farthest ring. Bondbreaker, the sound of the word ripples outward. Some repeat it in shocked whispers. Others suck in sharp breaths. Fear has a scent. I can smell it now, sour and electric. The muscles in my stomach clench, a tight band that wraps from spine to front. I chalk it up to terror. Enough, Roman snaps. You twist old stories to suit your ambition. I repeat what your seers mutter behind closed doors, Kyle says. An Omega-born heir who ends the age of alphas, a child who will make kings irrelevant. You tie that fate to our throats and call it love. Another wave of pressure bites low in my belly. I grit my teeth. Not now, not now. What do you want? Roman asks, voice dropping. Danger hums under every syllable. Kyle spreads his hands as if it's obvious. Send her with me. Let my people contain the prophecy beyond your borders. You keep your throne. The packs keep their future. The rest of us get to sleep without wondering which night your mate's brat will bring the roof down. The word brat slams into me. The cramp sharpens into something that steals my breath. I grab Roman's sleeve. Mira, he says, half turning. His gaze flicks to my face, to my hand clutching him, down to my stomach. What is it? Just tight, I manage. I'm fine. I am not fine. Heat spreads across my lower back. The baby pushes hard, as if trying to headbutt their way out. Kyle sees it and pounces. "Look, already the curse strains at its cage," he says, whipping the crowd with his words. "Is this what you want? A queen who bleeds omens on your sacred stones?" Around us, people shift. Fingers tighten on hilts. An omega near the back whimpers once, quickly cut off. The air feels crowded. Roman steps fully in front of me, a wall of muscle and rage. "You will not touch her," he says. "You will not speak of my child like that again." "I am speaking of all our children," Kyle fires back. "Of the packs who will inherit whatever catastrophe you birth tonight. Think, Roman. Are you king of your bed or of your people?" Another contraction hits, harder, forcing a strangled sound from my throat. I bend around it, clutching the back of Roman's jacket. The stone under my feet feels unsteady. Roman's arm hooks behind me, steadying. His scent floods my lungs, cutting through incense and fear. "Take your men," he tells Kyle, voice low and lethal. "Leave this courtyard while you still can." "If I do," Kyle says, "I leave my people to a fate crafted by your hormones and an old story. I won't." So I ask one last time, in front of witnesses and under the moon, give her up. Let us take the bondbreaker far from here. Do your duty to the packs. Duty. Sacrifice. Words I've heard whispered in corridors since the day he brought me back. "I am not a sacrifice," I hiss, surprising myself. Kyle's gaze snaps to me. "You are a knife," he says. "Blunt now, perhaps, but the child you carry has an edge." Pain lances again, sharp enough to make my eyes water. My free hand presses hard against my belly. I don't know if I'm trying to hold the baby in or shield them from his words. Roman looks back at me, sees too much, and something in his face cracks. "Stay behind me," he murmurs, the order wrapped in worry. "I can't exactly go anywhere," I grit out. He turns back to the crowd, shoulders squaring, voice rising. "Hear me," he calls, the king in him surging to the front. "There will be no sacrifice tonight. No exile. No containment. I will not hand my mate to vultures dressed in fur, and I will not let you turn my child into your excuse for fear." Kyle lifts his sword. His warriors follow, steel flaring along the edge of the dais. "Then you choose yourself over your packs," he says. "Let them remember that when the prophecy comes due..." The courtyard tenses as one. Guards shift, drawing their own blades. The elder clutches his bone beads, lips moving in frantic prayer. Above us, the full moon hangs heavy, bright enough that every drawn weapon gleams like a threat. Another contraction clamps down, fierce and deep. My knees buckle. Roman catches me, pulling me tight against his back, anchoring me with the solid line of him. He reaches back, fingers finding mine and locking tight. "Any man who steps toward my mate," he announces, voice ringing like struck iron, declares war on his king. The words land like stones. Kyle's eyes narrow. The wind tugs at his green cloak, at the banners above. The entire courtyard hangs on the next movement. Steel sings as more swords clear their sheaths. My womb clenches again, a sharp, undeniable rhythm. And when Roman's snarl rips through the sacred air, it carries a promise as clear and bright as the moon. If blood falls tonight, it will not be mine or my child's. Battle doesn't start with a roar, it starts with a crack. Steel meets steel somewhere to my left, a sound sharp enough to slice the tense silence in two. Then the whole courtyard erupts at once. Kael's green-cloaked warriors surging forward, our own guards scrambling to form a line, the sacred ring of the moon bonding shattered under boots and blades. Torches go down first. One is knocked from its bracket and hits the stone, flames licking greedily along the fallen banner. Another tumbles into the flower petals, turning white into black in seconds. Smoke billows up, curling around the full moon until its light looks dirty. Someone grabs me from behind. "Your Majesty, with us," a guard barks in my ear. His hand clamps around my arm, hauling me back from the dais. Another guard appears on my other side, fingers digging into my elbow. Between them, I'm half lifted, half dragged away, as bodies crash together where I was standing seconds before. "Roman!" I twist, trying to see him. He's in the thick of it already, sword flashing, eyes burning gold. 3 warriors in green close on him at once. He moves like a storm, every strike economical, but there are too many blades in too small a space. I catch one last glimpse of him blocking a thrust aimed at his ribs before the fight swallows him completely. Inside, the guard insists. Now. I can fight, I snap, even as a contraction clamps down low in my belly, hot and tight. My knees sag. Pain wipes the breath from my lungs. Not tonight, you can't, the second guard says. He'll skin us if you're still out here when something goes wrong. The courtyard blurs as they haul me toward the archway. Omega scents thicken along the edges of the space as attendants are shoved toward exits, skirt hems darkening with soot. Somewhere, a woman sobs once, cut short when someone hisses at her to be quiet. We pass into the corridor. The change is jarring, the crash and roar behind us, the hushed panic ahead. Omegas and betas crowd the hall, faces pinched, clutching bundles and children. A beta captain stands on a bench, shouting orders. "Sellers," he barks, "get below ground and stay there until you hear it from the king himself that it's clear. Move." He spots me and pales. "Your Majesty." "She's headed to the birthing wing," my guard says. "We need healers. The pains have started." "They're not." A smaller wave of pain rolls through, meaner than a cramp, but not the worst I've ever felt. I swallow my protest. "It's just from the fight." "Pain is pain," the beta says. "Get her to the midwives. I'll send a runner to the king." He turns away to shout at someone else. My guards tug me down a side hall, feet skidding on stone I've scrubbed before as an anonymous servant. The irony would be funny if my back didn't feel like it was being pried open with a crowbar. The smoke is inside now too, floating along the ceiling like a low cloud. Somewhere deeper in the palace, wood cracks and something collapses. Fire, of course. Moon bonding, prophecy, attempted coup. Why not add a burning palace to the list? We near the next junction where the corridor splits, left toward the safer, deeper cellars, right toward the birthing chambers and the old ritual rooms. I know every turn. I used to run messages and linens through these halls. A flash of green catches my eye. Kyle, cloaked dark and unmistakable even in the haze, strides down the right-hand corridor with half a dozen warriors at his back. He isn't heading for the fight. He's heading exactly where they're trying to take me, the birthing wing. Some cold, clear part of me understands the shape of his plan in an instant. Get the queen isolated. Get the child at the threshold between worlds. Force the ritual he wanted on the altar in the courtyard somewhere quieter, with fewer witnesses. I jerk against my guard's grips. "Stop," I say. They don't. They're focused on the hallway ahead, on the beta's orders echoing behind us, on the training drilled into them since they were old enough to hold a sword, save the queen. I said stop. When that doesn't work, I use my elbows. Roman's lessons come back in a brutal flash, the angle, the force, the target. I slam my pointy little bone into the first guard's ribs. He wheezes, grip loosening. I wrench my arm free, pivot, and bring my heel down on the other guard's instep hard enough to make him yelp. "What are you?" he starts. "If you drag me into that wing while he's headed there," I snap, "you are delivering me to him. Is that what you want your king to hear?" They freeze, fear flickering across their faces. Not fear of Kyle, fear of Roman's reaction. "Turn the Omegas," I say, breathing hard. "Get them below, keep them safe. Anyone in green you see between here and the inner gates, you take down. I'm not hiding while they write rituals on my body without me." "You can't go back out there," one of them says. A contraction hits, harder and meaner than the last. I fold around it, hand slapping against the wall for balance. When it finally loosens its teeth, I'm slick with sweat down my spine. "Pregnant," I finish. Not porcelain. They hover, torn. I don't wait for a decision. I turn and push back toward the courtyard, one palm dragging along the stone to keep me steady. The sounds of battle swell with every step, the clash of weapons, shouted commands, the choked-off cries of men who won't be howling at the next full moon. The smoke is thicker near the arch, stinging my eyes. When I step back into the moon courtyard, it's barely recognizable. Half the banners hang in scorched ribbons. Flames lick along one side of the colonnade, turning carved wolves into blackened ghosts. Bodies litter the stones, some moving weakly, others very, very still. Blood streaks the pale petals underfoot into pink sludge. Roman is somewhere near the center, a black and silver anchor in the chaos. He's bleeding from a gash along his arm, shirt torn, hair coming loose from its braids. He moves through Kyl's men with vicious focus, every strike making space, every block protecting someone behind him. Me. Always, somehow, me. "Mira!" he shouts when he spots me at the edge of the fight. For a heartbeat is control phrase, rage sparking hot. "I told you to stay inside, then stop making outside more interesting," I throw back, even as another contraction gnaws through my lower belly and I have to bite the inside of my cheek to stay upright. Kyle is climbing the steps of the dais, slipping through the fight with infuriating ease, his warriors parting around him. He has blood on his sleeve now, but his eyes are bright, almost exultant. He sees me. Of course he does. "There," he says, pointing with his sword, "the heart of it. Come, Mira, let's end this the right way." Two of his men move to intercept Roman, forcing him back down toward the base of the steps. Roman cuts one down, but the second presses him hard, their swords striking in a shower of sparks. More bodies flood the space between us. I stumble forward, dress dragging at my knees, weaving through gaps where I can, ducking instinctively when blades flash too close. I nearly trip over a fallen warrior, ours, not theirs. His eyes track me as I pass, dazed but alive. "Go," he rasps. I see him, I mutter. By the time I reach the dais, Kyle is already on it, hand outstretched. He snatches my wrist and hauls me up the last steps. "You've been very troublesome tonight," he says through his teeth. "Thank you," I pant. "I try." He drags me to the altar. The bowls from the ceremony are still there, one overturned, mixing blood and water into a dark puddle on the stone. The knife lies abandoned nearby, bone handle streaked red. "This is where it should have happened," Kyle says, snatching up the blade. His eyes glitter. "Before your king let sentiment ruin it." He catches my other wrist, twisting both behind my back with surprising strength. The knife kisses the sensitive skin at my throat. Below us, Roman roars, lunging, but a knot of fighters grapples him back. For once, he's too far. "You cut me now and we both bleed to death," I say, forcing my voice not to shake. "I don't need your throat," Kyle says, "just your blood. Willingly given or not, the stone doesn't care." He shoves my hand out over the altar, knife hovering above the veins in my wrist. "Stop fighting me, Mira," he says, low and urgent. "You think the council will spare you later? At least this way you live. The power stays here, contained. I am offering you survival." "My survival," I bite out, "is not yours to trade." Another contraction hits, worse than anything yet. It feels like my bones are grinding. I cry out, body bowing forward, restrained only by his grip. Spots dance in my vision. Something inside me cracks. It's not physical. It's deeper, a seam splitting open somewhere between bone and breath. Power rushes through the gap, hot and wild, not from outside, but from somewhere in the marrow of me. The bond to Roman hums louder, threads branching out into the stone under our feet, the air in my lungs, the beating hearts all around. For a moment, I feel everything. The terrified Omegas huddled in the lower halls, the Beta captain holding the line at a side door. Roman's fury and fear tangled tight in his chest as he fights to get to me. Kyle's ambition, sharp as broken glass. The baby inside me, heart thudding fast, caught between my pain and the world's. "No," I say, not sure who I'm refusing. The air around us vibrates. My skin buzzes like it's been plunged into cold water. The knife at my wrist suddenly feels very small. "Do it," Kyle snarls, more to himself than to me. He raises the blade. I push, not with my hands, with that strange new current boiling under my ribs. I shove it outward, wild and unshaped, fueled by pain and terror and a fury older than this palace. The world snaps. A shockwave blasts from my body, invisible but tangible. It slams into Kyle first, ripping his grip from my wrists, hurling him backward as if a giant hand has swatted him. He hits the dais pillar hard, stone cracking under the impact, air leaving his lungs in a choked gasp. The knife flies from his hand, skittering across the floor and over the edge of the steps. The The force rolls out into the courtyard, staggering warriors on both sides. Some drop to one knee, palms clapped over their ears as if a sound too high for them to hear has just screamed through their skulls. Torches gutter. Flames jump sideways. The elder's beads snap, scattering bone across the stone. Roman stumbles too, catching himself on his sword. His head jerks toward me, eyes wide. For a second, our gazes lock, and he feels it. The bond not as a private thread between us, but as a net thrown over everything. Mira, his mind seems to say without words. Then, later, the contraction lets go all at once, leaving me shaking and hollow. My knees buck. I catch myself on the edge of the altar, breath sawing. Kyle groans, sliding down the pillar. He manages to get one foot under him, pushing up, fury carving deep lines into his face. "What are you?" He spits. "Pregnant," I say, voice raw. "And done?" Roman reaches the dais. He takes the steps 3 at a time, blood-streaked and furious, and hits Kyle like a storm. Their swords clash once, twice. Kyle still dazed, Roman driven by a single lethal focus. "You touched her," Roman snarls, parrying a sloppy swing and stepping inside Kyle's guard. "You tried to use her." His blade slides up under Kyle's ribs. Kyle's breath leaves him in a shocked grunt. He looks down at the steel in his chest as if it's an inconvenience, then up at Roman, confusion warring with disbelief. "For the Pax," he wheezes. "For my mate," Roman says, and rips the sword free. Kyle collapses, cloak pooling around him, blood spreading across the white-smeared stone like a dark sunburst. His warriors hesitate, some dropping their weapons outright, others snarling in denial. Roman doesn't take his eyes off me. He drops his sword. It clatters against the altar. Then he's in front of me, hands catching my arms, steadying me as my legs finally decide they've had enough. "I told you to stay away from the fire," he says, voice rough, somewhere between anger and awe. "Of course you walked straight into it. You were in it first," I manage. "Seemed unfair to let you burn alone." He huffs something like a laugh, then flinches when my body tightens again, another contraction rolling through. His hand slides to my belly, palm pressing gently, feeling the hardness. Fear flashes across his face, naked and unguarded. "We're done here," he tells the world over my head. "Secure the palace." Then he scoops me up, one arm under my knees, one around my back, holding me like I weigh nothing at all. "Roman," I say, fighting to keep my eyes open, as the pain and exhaustion crash together. The courtyard blurs. Smoke, bodies, scattered petals. Kale's still form under the moon. "Save your breath," he murmurs into my hair, already striding toward the archway. "You're going to need it. Our child has very dramatic timing. The last thing I see before the corridor swallows us is the burning banners shedding ash like black snow, drifting down over the stone where my blood almost fell. Smoke still clung to the rafters when the world finally went dark around the edges. Roman laid me on the low birthing bed, but it felt less like resting and more like being set on an altar. My dress was gone in a blur of hands and knives, replaced by rough linens that stuck to my skin. Blood slicked my thighs, hot and wrong, and every time a contraction hit, it sluiced fresh warmth between my legs. "Too much," I heard one of the healers mutter. "Moon above, that's too much." The chamber spun. Candles guttered in their sconces, shadows breathed along the walls. Outside, the palace was still groaning from the battle. Distant shouts, the crackle of fire, the thud of boots, but in here, the noise muffled, like I'd been dropped underwater. Roman hovered at my side, one hand locked around mine, the other uselessly hovering over my shoulder, my face, my belly. His scent fought with the stench of blood and herbs, wolf and smoke threading through everything. "Breathe," he rasped. "Mira, look at me, stay with me." "I'm trying," I panted, as another contraction grabbed hold and squeezed. They weren't waves anymore, they were a tide surging faster and faster, barely giving me space to breathe between them. My back felt like it was splitting, my hips burned, hands moved between my legs again, firm and efficient. The elder midwife, small, gray eyes like flint, pressed her palm against my belly, then lower. Her fingers came away red. "The waters are long gone," she said to the younger woman beside her, "and the bleeding—" The younger one pressed a cone-shaped horn to my stomach, ear to the wider end. Her face tightened. "They don't like this," she said. "Hearts too fast, then dropping. They're fighting, but they can't keep it up," the elder finished for her. My own heart lurched. "The baby?" I croaked. "The baby is in distress," the elder said, and there was no pity in it, only truth. "And so are you." Roman's hand crushed mine. "Fix it." She finally lifted her gaze to his. It was like watching a mountain look at a storm. "I'll do everything I can," she said. "But this is not a night for easy answers. The contractions are too close. The amount of blood worries me. If we don't act, you could lose them both." "How do you act?" I demanded, teeth gritted against another surge of pain. "A cutting," she said plainly. "Take the child now. Try to stop the bleeding before it stops you." "Do it," Roman snapped. She didn't move. "If I cut while she's this weak, and with the child already stressed, I may not have enough hands or time for both. Sometimes we can save them both. Sometimes we cannot. If it comes to a moment where one life pulls away from the other—" She trailed off, then continued in a softer voice. "I need to know where to put my strength." Roman stared at her like he hadn't understood. "You're asking me to choose." "I'm telling you, you may only get one," she replied. "You can pretend otherwise, or you can decide which life I fight hardest for if it comes to that." Another contraction slammed through me. This one felt like it had teeth. I arched off the bed, a strangled sound tearing from my throat. When it eased, my limbs trembled. "Stop talking around it," I gasped. "Say what you mean." The elder sighed. "If I fight for the child, I may lose the mother," she said. "If I fight for the mother, I may lose the child. I cannot promise both, not with how things are." The room shrank, the air going thin. I heard my own breathing, loud and ragged. Roman's fingers were shaking around mine now, his jaw flexed, muscle jumping. "There must be another way," he said. "Some potion, There is no magic that makes blood go back where it came from," she cut in. "You've seen men bleed out on battlefields, Majesty. You know that. This is the same war, just a different front." He flinched at that. For a second, he looked like he had in the courtyard when Kyle threw the word bondbreaker into the air, like someone had ripped open his chest and held up something ugly inside. "I won't decide this," he said, voice harsh. "I won't. You already are," she said quietly. "Standing here doing nothing is also a choice. It just guarantees the worst of all outcomes." I squeezed his hand hard enough to grind bone. "Roman!" He looked down at me, and the king slipped. All that was left was the man who had chased me across half the kingdom and then vowed to burn it for me. "They need an answer," I said. My voice shook, but the words were clear. "You have to give them one." His eyes were wet and furious. "Don't ask that of me." "I'm not asking," I whispered. "I'm telling you, because if you don't, and we both die, I will haunt you until the end of your days for wasting the one thing you could control." A strangled sound escaped him, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He bowed his head for a heartbeat, shoulders shaking, then lifted it again with something carved into place behind his eyes. He brought our joined hands to his lips and kissed my knuckles, the gesture jarring against the iron stink of the room. "I once threatened to take our child from you," he said, voice raw. "Told you I'd tear them away if you didn't bend." "I remember," I said. The memory flashed through me, his body caging mine in my doorway, his words a blade pressed to my throat. "Marry me, or I take the child." "I was wrong," he said simply. The two words sounded like they cost him more than any war. He turned to the healer. "You save her." Her chin lifted. "And the child?" "If you can save both, you do it," he said. "You fight like the moon herself is watching. But if it comes to one breath, one stitch, one life—" His voice broke. He forced the words out anyway. "You choose Mira, you let the air go." There it was. The mirror held up, the ultimatum reversed. "Marry me, or I take the child" had become "lose one, or I lose you." The chamber went very quiet. Even the crackle of far-off fire seemed to dim. "As you command," the elder said. There was no triumph in it, only a terrible kind of respect. Another contraction raked through me, harder, closer. I couldn't hold back the scream this time. It ripped up my throat, tearing my voice raw. Roman's free hand came to my hair, smoothing sweat-soaked strands away from my face. "Stay," he murmured over and over, like a litany. "Stay with me." The healer shoved a roll of cloth between my teeth. "Bite," she said. "You scream yourself hoarse, and it'll be harder to breathe when you need to." Cool liquid was poured over my belly, my thighs. Tools clinked softly on a tray, steel kissing steel. The elder's fingers were steady as she positioned herself. She looked at Roman one last time. "Whatever you hear," she warned, "do not interfere. If you make my hand slip, you may kill her yourself." His whole body went rigid. "If she dies, your life is forfeit," he said. "If she dies," the healer replied, "I will be too busy shouting at the moon to worry about you." Then there was no more talking. The knife touched my skin, and the world exploded. Pain like I'd never known tore through me, white-hot and blinding. I bit down on the cloth so hard my jaw creaked. Voices blurred into a single sharp line, steady, deeper, there, hold her. Blood scent flooded the air, thick and coppery. My body felt split, half on the bed, half hovering somewhere above it, watching. Roman's forehead pressed to mine. His breath hitched with every sound I made. I felt his hand on my cheek, thumb rough and gentle, as if he could anchor me in my own body. "You're here," he breathed. "Stay here. Don't you dare leave me." I wanted to tell him I wasn't planning on going anywhere, that I'd chosen this madness, this cage, this man, that I wasn't finished yelling at him yet. But all that came out was a muffled groan. Somewhere lower, the healers moved fast. I heard scraps, cord, too tight, hearts dropping. Again, I couldn't tell whose heart they meant. Mine? The baby's? Both? The room tilted. Dark crept in from the corners, thick and heavy. The cloth between my teeth tasted of salt and iron. My fingers, still twined with Roman's, went numb. His voice followed me down. "I chose you," he whispered, as if I might argue. "Remember that. I can lose a throne. I can't lose you," I tried to answer. To say, "You idiot, I wanted both. You were supposed to find a way." But the darkness surged, swallowing words and pain alike. The last thing I felt was his grip, desperate and unyielding, and somewhere under my ribs, a faint, fluttering kick. The stubborn heartbeat of a child who hadn't agreed to any of this, fighting to stay with us despite the choice that had just broken both their parents open. Silence is the first thing I notice. Not the sharp, waiting silence of a battlefield, that one hums with tension and teeth. This is muffled, layered with the soft crackle of a low fire and the faint rasp of someone breathing too carefully. My body feels far away, wrapped in cotton. For a moment I float between waking and whatever came before, unsure if I'm actually inside my skin or just hovering above it. Then weight returns. Ache follows. A deep, dragging soreness runs across my lower belly, like a line drawn in fire and then left to smolder. My throat feels scraped raw. The air tastes of boiled herbs and old smoke, with an undercurrent of something milky and warm that makes my chest tighten before I understand why. There's a hand around mine. Rough, calloused, wrapped so firmly that the bones in my fingers creak when I try to flex. The thumb moves in slow circles over my knuckles, over and over, like whoever owns it is afraid that if they stop, I'll vanish. I peel my eyes open. The ceiling beams swim into focus first, dark wood smudged with soot from the night's fires. Then I tilt my head and see him. Roman sits in a chair crammed so close to the bed that his knees knock the frame. He looks nothing like a king. No crown, no armor, no war leathers, just a plain dark shirt clinging to shoulders that slump as if someone cut the strings holding him up. Stubble shadows his jaw. His braids are half undone. His eyes are the worst, sunken, bloodshot, hollowed like he hasn't blinked in hours. "Hey," I croak. It comes out more breath than sound. His head snaps up. For a heartbeat, he freezes, staring like he doesn't trust what he's seeing. "Mira?" he says, and my name shatters in the middle. His grip on my hand tightens. "You're awake." "Unfortunately," I rasp. "You look terrible." A broken laugh punches out of him, half relief, half disbelief. "You almost died," he says. "You're allowed to find a kinder opening." I'm consistent, I mutter. Then the fog in my mind clears enough for panic to slip through. The baby. A thin, outraged wail slices across my words. The sound comes from the far side of the room, sharp and high and very much alive. My heart lurches so hard I try to sit up, but a sheet of pain pins me in place. My belly protests, bandaged and sore, the line of stitches burning. "Easy," Roman says quickly, leaning in. "Don't move too fast. Don't tell me what to do." I snap on instinct, but my voice trembles. "They're here," he says, and something in his face transforms. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loosens, making room for something so raw and tender it steals my breath more than any contraction. The younger healer rises from a low rocker in the corner, a small bundle cradled against her chest. The crying spikes as she crosses to us, tiny fists punching the air from within soft blankets. "They have opinions," I whisper. "Wonder who they get that from," Roman murmurs. The healer lowers the bundle into my free arm with careful hands. "Support the head," she instructs, though my body is already curling around the baby like it's been waiting to do this for years. The weight of them is a shock. They're small, frighteningly small, but solid, heavier than they look. Their faces scrunched, mouth open in a furious O, cheeks flushed from the effort of existing. A shock of dark hair curls damply against a soft skull. One flailing fist finds my chest and scrabbles there, insistent. "Hi," I breathe, as useless an introduction as any. They blink up at me, and their eyes, for a heartbeat they're bright molten gold, sharp and assessing in a way that is pure Roman. Then, like clouds sliding over the sun, the color shifts, draining into familiar gray. My gray. Gold flares again at the edges, then settles back to slate. "Oh," I whisper, "that's dramatic." Roman leans closer, unable to keep his distance. His hand hovers a few inches above the baby's head, not quite daring to touch. "They fought," he says quietly. "When their hearts slowed, when yours did. You both fought." "Of course we did," I say, though the memory is shredded, pain and darkness and his voice refusing to let me go. "Did you doubt us?" "Never," he lies, and we both know it. The door opens with a soft scrape. The palace seer slips in, robes still dusted with ash, hair frayed from the night's chaos. She looks older than she did the last time I saw her. Eyes deeper, shoulders bowed by something heavier than years. "I will be brief," she says, voice low. "I know this is not a time for politics." "Then leave," Roman says immediately. In a moment, her gaze finds the baby in my arms and softens. "I owed you more than hints, Mira, and I owed this child more than fear." I tighten my hold. "You called them bondbreaker," I say. "You let the council twist that into doom." "I said the old way of ruling would not survive them," she replies. The council heard what they wanted to hear, the end of their comfort, the end of rule by fear. They turned it into the end of alphas. "And it isn't?" Roman's tone is knife-sharp. She shakes her head. "The vision was always chains, not just on Omegas, but on you as well. Bonds used as shackles, mates used as leverage, fear written into every law. I saw those chains snapping. I saw wolves forced to stand on something other than terror. So our child doesn't end the line," I say slowly. "They end the way the line behaves." Yes, the seer steps closer, staff tapping lightly against the floor. "They are bondbreaker because they break the old bindings, the idea that an Omega's worth is her womb, that a king's power is measured by how many people cower, that prophecy is a cudgel instead of a warning. They carry both your blood and his, both instincts. They will make a new shape neither side quite understands yet." Roman's jaw works. His hand finally settles on the blanket near the baby's feet, huge fingers barely brushing tiny toes. "And the war?" he asks. "The fractures?" "You saw those too." "I saw struggle," she admits. "Change always brings it. But I also saw you two standing where kings used to stand alone." I snort softly. "We've been doing that all week." Her mouth twitches. "Then perhaps the future is already bending." She inclines her head to the baby. "Bondbreaker, you were never meant to erase your people, only to make them better or see them fall by their own choice." She turns to go, then hesitates. "One more thing," she says, looking at Roman. "I saw you choosing majesty, not crown, not prophecy. Them," Her gaze flicks between me and the baby. The moon does not often give second chances. Don't waste this one. Roman's throat works. Get out before I remember to be angry with you. She leaves without taking offense. The door clicks shut. The room shrinks back down to the three of us and the low crackle of the hearth. For a long moment, no one speaks. The baby quiets, settling into a series of soft grunts and snuffles against my chest. Their warmth sinks into my bones, chasing away lingering cold. Roman reaches up, pulls something from his hair. A thin silver circlet bent slightly out of shape. I hadn't realized he still had it on. He looks at it for a breath, then drops it. The crown hits the stone floor with a dull, unceremonious clink and rolls under the bed. Is that symbolic? I ask. Very, he says. He shifts from the chair to his knees beside the bed. The sight punches the air from my lungs more than the pain ever did. The Alpha King on his knees is something stories invent, not reality. But he's here, level with my face, eyes raw. I'm not speaking as king right now, he says quietly. I'm speaking as the man who chose you over an heir and thought he'd have to live in a world without either. Tears sting the backs of my eyes. You're terrible at light conversation. I'm out of practice. His gaze drops to the baby, then back to me. Listen to me, both of you, once, before the council slithers in here with their scrolls and for the good of the pack's nonsense. His hand rests more firmly on the blanket over the baby's legs. They kick in response, small heel thumping his palm. His voice roughens. They will try to turn you into a weapon, he says. Into a banner. Into a story they can wave around to justify whatever they're afraid of. They did it to me, long before the crown ever touched my head. They'll do it to this child twice as hard. The baby's eyes crack open, unfocused but bright. Gold shimmers over gray again, like they're trying on identities. I won't let it happen, Roman continues. Not while I have a heartbeat. You, his gaze pins me, will not vanish into these walls. You will stand beside me when we drag their laws, kicking and screaming, into something that doesn't treat Omegas as assets. You will raise this child, not a council of old men. You will tell me when I'm wrong, loudly. Often, glad we're on the same page, I murmur. And you, he says, looking down at the baby with a tenderness that makes my chest ache, will never be asked to bleed for a prophecy. You are not a curse, not a symbol, not an answer to someone else's fear. You are our child. You are bondbreaker because you get to decide who you are, not because a vision pinned you to a path. I swallow. What if the packs demand otherwise? Then they can find another alpha, he says without hesitation. I almost lost you tonight. I will not lose myself as well just to keep men comfortable with their nightmares. The baby yawns, a tiny squeaky thing. Their fist opens and closes against my chest like they're grabbing at the air. You'd walk away, I say, from the throne, from all of it. He huffs out a breath that isn't quite a laugh. The throne was never the point, Mira, you know that. I wanted a kingdom I could control so it couldn't hurt the people I cared about. Now I care about 2 people more than I care about any crown. 3, I correct, glancing down at the bundle. 3, he amends. Fine, I care about 3 very loud, very stubborn hearts more than I care about a chair and some metal. Emotion tightens my throat. I run a fingertip along the baby's cheek, marveling at the softness, the impossible fragility. Bondbreaker, I murmur. We'll teach you how to break the right things. Roman leans in until his forehead rests lightly against mine, then drops a feather-soft kiss on the baby's brow. Us, he says, the word rough but certain. Not king and Omega, not ruler and prophecy, just us, against every chain they try to lock you with. For the first time since he appeared in my doorway with that terrible ultimatum, the word us doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like a key. Outside somewhere, the palace creaks as repairs begin, as fires are put out, as whispers start weaving new stories around what happened under the moon. In here, it's just the 3 of us, a discarded crown, and the quiet, stubborn certainty that whatever this child was born to break, we will face it together. If the age of ruling by fear is ending, it will not be because prophecy demanded blood. It will be because a king knelt, an Omega refused to bow, and a bondbreaker was loved before they were ever feared, and a new kingdom was born. Thank you for joining us in this story. So tell where you're watching from and what is your favorite moment in this story.